This video is for educational and documentary purposes only. Gangster Piles USA does not promote or glorify violence, criminal organizations, or illegal activity. All people and events discussed are part of real historical crime cases in the United States based on public records and journalistic sources and are shown to highlight the real consequences of crime. Violence is mentioned strictly for reporting in historical context in line with YouTube policies. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to Gangster Files USA. Here we dive deep into the world of real crime stories, bringing you informative and educational content that uncovers the truth behind the headlines. If you're passionate about understanding the complexities of crime and the stories behind it, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Join us as we explore the most intriguing and eye-opening cases across the USA. When people talk about street gangs in America, there are certain names that instantly change the mood. Your breathing slows down, your attention sharpens. One of those names is the Bloods. But here's the real question. If someone walks past you on the street, silent, calm, how would you know they belong to one of the most feared gangs in America? It usually starts with a color, red. Not fashion, not style. Red is a statement, a warning, and sometimes a death sentence. For Blood members, red isn't optional, it's identity. Red bandanas, red shoelaces, red hats, red clothing. Every piece sends the same message. This is who I am, and this is who I stand against. Back in the 1970s, when Los Angeles streets were turning into battle zones, the Bloods chose red deliberately. Their rivals, the Crips, wore blue. In those days, one glance could decide everything, friend or enemy. And then there's the bandana, a simple piece of cloth that carries dangerous meaning. Hanging from a pocket, tied around the head, wrapped around the wrist. Each style says something. Set affiliation, rank, territory. Some meanings are so specific only insiders understand them. But Bloods don't just speak through clothing. They speak with their hands. Hand signs. Silent, precise, intentional. Fingers shaped into a B. But that's just the surface. Every set has its own variations, its own visual language. These signs can mean respect, or challenge, or a threat, without a single word spoken. Even in courtrooms, even in mugshots, members have flashed their signs, as if to say, you can arrest me, but you can't erase who I am. Then there's language. Bloods don't just talk differently, they think differently. The letter C, the first letter of Crips, is avoided, sometimes replaced, sometimes erased completely. Cool becomes bool. Crazy becomes brazy. It's not slang for fun, it's linguistic warfare. And the word blood itself, that's not a nickname, it's a bond. Members call each other blood or damu. Family, loyalty, shared struggle, even when that bond is sealed in violence. Some identities can be hidden, others are permanent. Tattoos, M-O-B, U-B-N, C-K, or simply blood. Once inked, there's no walking away. Then come the walls, graffiti, not random vandalism, territorial declarations. This block is claimed, this area is watched. Every tag is a message, every mark is a warning. The walk, the stare, the silence, confidence mixed with danger. And music, rap turned into another language of identity, lyrics filled with codes and signals, spreading the culture far beyond the streets. But here's the truth. These symbols don't just unite, they expose. To rivals, to police, to the system. What protects them also makes them targets. And the symbols keep changing. New platforms, new methods, same purpose. Belonging, recognition, power. Even when that power lives in the shadows. Every powerful force, legal or illegal, has a beginning. A moment where pressure, fear, and desperation collide, and something new is born. The Bloods were no different. To understand how they came into existence, we have to rewind time to early 1970s Los Angeles, a city on edge, racial tensions simmering under the surface, factories shutting down, jobs disappearing, police presence increasing, but trust collapsing. For young black men in South Central Los Angeles, the streets didn't just feel dangerous, they felt abandoned. But before the Bloods ever existed, another name had already taken control of those streets: the Crips. In the late 1960s, a young Raymond Washington, along with Stanley Tookie Williams, helped create what would become one of the most powerful street gangs in American history. The Crips expanded fast, too fast. Neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block. They wore blue, they moved in numbers, and they didn't ask for permission. By the early 1970s, the Crips were no longer just a gang, they were a force. Smaller, independent street gangs suddenly found themselves surrounded, pressured, absorbed, or attacked. Groups like the Brims, the Bounty Hunters, the Denver Lanes, the Athens Park Boys, and the Bishops. Each had their own territory, their own history, their own pride, but alone they were vulnerable. The Crips' expansion left these gangs facing an impossible choice: disappear or fight back. Individually, they stood no chance, so something unusual happened, something rare in the gang world. Around 1972, in and around Compton, leaders from these smaller gangs began talking, quietly, carefully. These weren't friendly meetings, they were survival talks. What they came up with wasn't a single gang, but something more flexible, more dangerous: an alliance. Instead of a centralized organization, they created a confederation. Each gang would keep its own leadership, its own rules, its own identity. But when it came to the Crips, they would stand together. That decision changed everything. And then came the name, Bloods. Where did it come from? Even today, the answer isn't simple. Some say it came from the word blood itself, a term used in black communities to describe someone closer than a friend, family. Others trace it back to the Piru Street Boys in Compton, often called Pirus, who became one of the first and most influential groups in the alliance. There are also those who believe the name symbolized exactly what was coming next: bloodshed. Most likely, the name survived because it carried all those meanings at once: brotherhood, identity, violence. The Piru Street Boys are often recognized as the foundation of what became the Bloods. Their territory sat along Piru Street in Compton, and their influence shaped the alliance's early direction. It was also here that one of the most important choices was made: color. The Crips wore blue, so the Bloods chose red. Not randomly, not for style. Red was opposition. Red was defiance. In a city where colors could decide life or death, this choice was deliberate and dangerous. The environment around them made this evolution almost inevitable. This was post-Watts riots Los Angeles. The promise of the civil rights movement hadn't reached these streets. The Black Panther Party, once a symbol of protection and resistance, was being dismantled by law enforcement. Schools failed, jobs disappeared, police encounters grew harsher. The gang filled a vacuum. It offered protection when no one else would, belonging when society offered rejection, power in a world that made young men feel powerless. In the beginning, the Bloods weren't a sophisticated criminal enterprise. They were defensive, focused on territory, focused on survival. Violence wasn't strategic, it was personal. A look, a word, a step into the wrong neighborhood. Retaliation followed quickly. As the 1970s moved forward, something changed. The alliance held. While Crip sets often fought each other, the Bloods, bound by a shared enemy, maintained relative unity. Not perfect, not peaceful, but coordinated. That structure allowed them to grow, from Compton to Los Angeles to other parts of California. Each new set carried the Blood identity, but operated independently. This decentralization became their signature. It made them harder to dismantle, harder to control, harder to predict. But it also meant chaos could spread just as easily as loyalty. Then came the 1980s, and with it, crack cocaine. Suddenly, the streets weren't just about respect or territory, they were about money, a lot of it. What began as neighborhood defense transformed into organized crime. Drug markets replaced street corners, profit replaced pride, and violence escalated to a level Los Angeles had never seen before. The Bloods adapted, just like they always had. Their origin wasn't built on ambition, it was built on necessity. They didn't set out to become infamous, they set out to survive. Understanding how the Bloods were born doesn't justify what followed, but it explains it. Because once that alliance was formed, once red was chosen, once blood was spilled, there was no going back. This was the origin.
By the time the Bloods had firmly established their identity on the streets, something else had quietly taken shape beneath the surface. What looked chaotic from the outside, what seemed like scattered violence and disconnected neighborhoods, was actually held together by a structure most people never noticed. When people imagine criminal organizations, they often picture something familiar: a boss at the top, orders flowing downward, punishments handed out for disobedience, a clear chain of command like the Italian mafia or a cartel. But the Bloods were never built that way, and that difference changed everything. From the beginning, the Bloods were not a single organization. They were never meant to be. What existed instead was something looser, more flexible, and far harder to destroy: a confederation. Independent groups bound together by shared enemies, shared symbols, and shared survival, but not by centralized control. To understand how the Bloods function, you have to understand one key concept. There is no single Bloods leadership, no supreme boss, no headquarters, no universal rulebook that every member follows. At the core of Blood organization is the set. A set is the foundation. It's local, it's territorial, and it answers primarily to itself. Each set usually represents a specific neighborhood or housing project, a few streets, a block, sometimes even a single complex. Names are tied directly to geography: Bounty Hunter Bloods from Nickerson Gardens, Van Ness Gangster Brims, Centinela Park Family Bloods. These aren't branches of a larger company, they're independent crews that chose to operate under the Red identity. Each set has its own leadership, its own internal rules, and its own way of doing business. Some are tightly organized, others are loose and volatile, but all of them exist under the same red banner. Inside a set, hierarchy does exist, just not in the way outsiders expect. At the top is usually an old gangster, an OG, not appointed, not elected, earned. OG status comes from time, reputation, and survival. Years in the gang, years on the street, often years behind bars. An OG's authority doesn't come from fear alone, it comes from respect, and respect can be lost. If younger members stop listening, if the OG shows weakness, or if prison cuts off their influence, that authority can disappear almost overnight. Below the OGs are experienced members who function as shot callers. These are the people who move things forward day to day. They coordinate drug sales, handle weapons, manage money, pass messages, decide who gets disciplined and how. There are no official titles, no written roles. Everything is fluid, based on trust, skill, and circumstance. Then come the active members, the soldiers. These are the faces law enforcement sees most often: young, visible, aggressive. They protect territory, sell drugs, carry out retaliation, and enforce the reputation of the set on the street. At the bottom are the prospects, those trying to earn their way in. There's no single initiation process across all blood sets, but loyalty must be proven, often violently. Crimes aren't just committed for profit, they're commitments, lines crossed that can't be undone. What truly separates the Bloods from traditional crime families is how sets interact with each other. There is no Bloods Council issuing commands nationwide, no meeting where leaders gather to decide strategy for the entire organization. Instead, relationships matter more than rank. Sets cooperate when it benefits them, they clash when it doesn't. Two blood sets in the same area might share weapons, drug suppliers, or manpower. Another set across the country might have no contact with them at all. The name Blood connects them, but it doesn't control them. This decentralized design makes the organization incredibly resilient. When law enforcement takes down a mafia boss, the structure collapses upward. When they arrest a Blood OG, the set adapts. Someone else steps in, operations continue, other sets are barely affected. There is no single point of failure. Prison plays a critical role in holding this structure together. Behind bars, the Bloods become more organized, not less. Prison forces proximity. Leaders from different sets interact, rules are debated, disputes are resolved or escalated. Some OGs continue running street operations from inside prison walls. Orders are passed through visitors, coded letters, phone calls, and released members. Prison also becomes a classroom. Young Bloods learn history, politics, and survival. They learn who to trust, who not to cross, and how the structure really works. On the East Coast, this environment gave birth to something different. In 1993, inside Rikers Island, the United Blood Nation was formed. Unlike the loose West Coast model, UBN introduced ranks, titles, and a clearer chain of command. It was more centralized, more disciplined, more traditional. Same name, same symbols, very different structure. This split created two versions of the Blood identity, one decentralized and fluid, one organized and hierarchical. Financially, Blood sets operate independently. There's no central treasury, no percentage sent upward. Each set funds itself through its own criminal activities: drug trafficking, robbery, extortion, fraud. Profits stay local. That independence keeps money flowing even when other sets collapse, but it also creates problems. Sets fight each other, disputes erupt, territory becomes contested even between Bloods. Without centralized control, unity depends entirely on relationships and mutual benefit. And relationships can break. What emerges from all this is not chaos, but controlled disorder. A structure designed not for efficiency, but for survival. Flexible, adaptable, hard to eliminate. The Bloods didn't become powerful because they were organized like a corporation. They became powerful because they weren't. And as law enforcement learned over decades, dismantling a structure with no center is far harder than tearing down one with a clear top. By the time authorities began to truly understand this model, the Bloods were already everywhere, embedded in neighborhoods, prisons, and entire generations. And once a structure like that takes root, it doesn't disappear easily. It evolves.
By the time the Bloods had perfected their decentralized structure, something else was already happening quietly in the background. Without a central leader, without a single command, without a master plan written on paper, they were spreading. What began as a defensive alliance on a few streets in Southern California was no longer confined to one city or even one state. The structure that made the Bloods hard to destroy also made them easy to export, and Los Angeles was only the starting point. Southern California remains the symbolic heart of Blood territory. This is where the identity was forged, where neighborhoods became legacy zones, where entire generations grew up under the same set names. In cities like Compton, Inglewood, Pasadena, and across south-central Los Angeles, Blood sets became deeply rooted. Territory wasn't just land, it was history, a park, a housing project, a single street corner that had been defended for decades. In Los Angeles, gang geography is razor sharp. One block can mean safety, the next block can mean death, and those boundaries rarely change. But pressure changes everything. As law enforcement intensified crackdowns, as rivalries escalated, and as families moved in search of work or safety, Blood culture began to move with them. California became the first expansion zone. From San Francisco to Oakland, from Sacramento to San Diego, from Fresno to Bakersfield. Sometimes Blood sets were founded by members who left Los Angeles and recreated what they knew. Other times, local gangs adopted the Blood identity for protection, reputation, or survival. The name carried weight, the color carried fear. But the real acceleration came through a place most people never consider when mapping gang territory: prison. State and federal prisons became crossroads. Members from different cities met behind bars. They exchanged stories, rules, symbols, connections. When they were released, they didn't return empty-handed. They carried Blood identity into new cities like a blueprint stored in memory. That's how the East Coast chapter began. In the early 1990s, New York City, specifically Rikers Island, became a turning point. Inside those walls, the Blood identity didn't just arrive, it evolved. In 1993, the United Blood Nation was formed. Unlike the loose West Coast model, this version was structured, ranked, disciplined. Same red, same name, different system. From New York, Blood presence spread rapidly across the East Coast. New Jersey followed, Newark, Jersey City. Philadelphia saw Blood sets collide with entrenched local gangs. Baltimore absorbed them into an already volatile street landscape. Then came Connecticut, Massachusetts, smaller cities that had never dealt with West Coast gang culture before. The pattern was consistent: urban centers, economic pressure, young people searching for identity. The Bloods didn't conquer these cities, they blended into them. The South was the next frontier: Atlanta, Charlotte, Miami, Houston, Dallas, New Orleans.
Some southern cities already had strong local gangs and prison organizations. In those places, blood sets had to fight for relevance. In others, they filled a vacuum. The South's rapid urban growth, expanding drug markets, and persistent inequality created ideal conditions. And once again, migration played its role. Families moved, former inmates relocated, gang culture traveled quietly inside people. The Midwest wasn't untouched. Chicago's gang ecosystem was already one of the most complex in the country, yet blood sets still appeared. Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Kansas City. In some cities, bloods were powerful. In others, they were fragmented, symbolic, still forming. But the name was there. And once the name appears, it rarely disappears completely. Even rural and suburban America began seeing traces. Small towns reporting red bandanas, suburban schools dealing with students claiming blood affiliation. Sometimes these were real connections, sometimes they weren't. Music, social media, and internet culture blurred the line. Blood identity no longer required physical proximity. It could be learned online, performed digitally, claimed without permission. That created a dangerous illusion where affiliation existed without structure and violence followed without rules. Beyond US borders, the reach continued. Canada documented blood sets, particularly in major cities. Central American countries saw deportees return with gang identity intact, sometimes forming new sets abroad. Even Europe reported blood-affiliated groups, though many lacked direct ties to American sets. At this point, presence meant different things in different places. In some cities, blood sets controlled territory, drugs, and violence. In others, the identity was little more than a borrowed name and color. But law enforcement had a problem. The structure that allowed bloods to spread also made them nearly impossible to erase. There was no headquarters to raid, no leader to arrest, no national collapse to trigger. Federal agencies tracked them, local gang units monitored them, task forces formed and reformed, yet shutting down one set barely rippled outward. Economically, the map told a clear story. Blood presence followed poverty, disinvestment, failing schools, limited opportunity. Where the legitimate system failed, the gang offered an alternative, not a good one, but a visible one. As gentrification began reshaping cities like Los Angeles and New York, historic territories were disrupted, families displaced, neighborhoods transformed. But displacement doesn't erase culture, it moves it. And the blood identity proved adaptable. What started on a few streets in Compton became a national footprint, not through conquest, not through command, but through movement, through prisons, through families, through culture. And long after the original streets changed, the color red continued appearing in places no one expected. Because once an identity spreads without a center, it doesn't need one to survive.
To understand the Bloods, we have to face an uncomfortable reality. This isn't just a street crew or a social group. The Bloods are a criminal organization, and their actions cause real harm to real people and communities. Sure, social conditions like poverty, systemic inequality, and broken neighborhoods play a role in why gangs form, but we can't sugarcoat or romanticize the violence, the drug trafficking, and the other crimes that define blood sets. What we're about to explore is exactly what they do, the crimes they commit, and the impact their actions have on both their members and the neighborhoods they control. Let's start with the most obvious and brutal activity, violence. The Bloods use violence for many reasons: to defend their territory, retaliate against rivals, assert respect, prove themselves during initiation, or simply survive in a violent subculture. Drive-by shootings, once a hallmark of LA gang warfare, are still used in some blood sets. These attacks involve members firing weapons from vehicles into rival territory or at specific targets. More often than not, these shootings are retaliatory. One attack sparks another, creating a cycle of revenge that can last for generations, long after the original conflict has been forgotten. Street-level violence is common and often spontaneous. A simple argument between rival gang members can escalate in seconds into a physical fight, or worse. Respect is everything in gang culture. Something as small as the wrong glance, wearing the wrong colors in the wrong neighborhood, or failing to show proper deference can trigger a violent response. This constant threat of immediate retaliation creates a tense environment in neighborhoods where Bloods operate. Residents learn quickly that danger can appear at any moment, often from young people who are themselves just trying to survive. Assaults serve multiple purposes within the gang. They can be disciplinary, punishing members who break the rules or show disloyalty. They can be predatory, used to rob victims or establish dominance. They can also be performative, a way to display toughness and gain respect within the gang hierarchy. Young recruits, eager to prove themselves, often commit assaults to climb the ranks or simply to earn credibility. But violence alone doesn't pay the bills. The real economic engine behind the Bloods is drug trafficking. The crack epidemic of the 1980s transformed street gangs from territorial groups into highly organized drug distribution networks, and the Bloods were no exception. Drug sales fund the gang's operations, support its members, and generate enormous revenue for the sets that control profitable territories. The drug trade within Blood organizations operates on several levels. At the street level, young members act as lookouts and low-level dealers, selling drugs on corners, in parks, or out of gang-controlled houses. These street-level dealers are the most exposed to law enforcement, but also the easiest to replace. Above them are mid-level distributors who supply multiple street-level dealers, manage larger quantities of drugs, and coordinate territories. At the top are the set leaders, who arrange large purchases, oversee the distribution networks, and handle the substantial cash flow. Over the decades, the types of drugs trafficked have evolved. Crack cocaine was once the foundation of gang drug business, but today, blood sets traffic powder cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, heroin, and increasingly, fentanyl. Some sets even traffic prescription drugs, either stolen or obtained fraudulently. While the specific drugs may vary depending on location and market demand, the business model is consistent. Buy wholesale, control territories, distribute, and protect profits with violence if necessary. Robbery is another key activity. Blood members target individuals, businesses, and rival drug dealers. Street robberies happen in gang neighborhoods and nearby areas, while commercial robberies target stores, gas stations, or other businesses, often using threats or firearms. Some of the most lucrative robberies target rival gang dealers, providing both cash and drugs while simultaneously striking at enemies. Home invasions, though riskier, can net large amounts of money, drugs, weapons, and other valuables. Weapons trafficking is another area where the Bloods generate both income and access to firearms. Guns are obtained through straw purchases, theft, the black market, or sometimes larger trafficking operations across state lines. Easy access to firearms fuels the lethal violence we discussed earlier, creating a cycle where weapons are both a tool and a commodity. Fraud and identity theft have become increasingly common. Credit card fraud, check fraud, and identity theft schemes allow members to make money with less risk than violent crime. Some sets even engage in tax fraud using stolen identities. Technology has opened new avenues for these financial crimes, making them an important part of the gang's operations. Some blood sets are also involved in prostitution and sex trafficking. Members may control women through violence, drugs, or psychological manipulation. This is among the most harmful and reprehensible of their activities, inflicting trauma on vulnerable individuals. Not every set engages in this, but where it occurs, it is particularly damaging. Extortion is another method the Bloods use to maintain control and generate revenue. Businesses in gang territories may pay for protection, which is essentially paying not to be attacked. Independent drug dealers may be taxed or forced out of certain areas. Extortion relies on the threat of violence, explicit or implied, to work effectively. Other criminal activities include vandalism and property crime. Graffiti marks territory, memorializes fallen members, disrespects rivals, and communicates messages. While often dismissed as minor, graffiti contributes to neighborhood blight, signals gang presence, and intimidate residents. Burglary, car theft, and other property crimes serve operational needs as well, such as stealing vehicles for drive-by shootings. Even inside prisons, blood activities continue. Members maintain affiliations, provide protection against rivals, smuggle contraband, organize assaults, recruit new members, and direct outside operations. The gang's influence stretches far beyond street corners. Social media has added a new dimension. Members post videos flaunting weapons, drugs, and cash, disrespect rivals, communicate using coded language, and even recruit by glamorizing the gang lifestyle. Ironically, these same posts often provide law enforcement with direct evidence of criminal activity. It's important to remember that not everyone who claims blood affiliation is deeply involved in crime. Some young people adopt symbols and colors without participating in violence or drug sales. Older members may scale back their criminal involvement while keeping their identity. But at the core, the Bloods' main activities, drug trafficking, violence, robbery, and related crimes, cause serious harm, perpetuate cycles of poverty and incarceration, and traumatize entire communities. Economically, blood criminal activity is significant. Street-level drug sets can generate thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a week. Across hundreds of sets nationwide, this creates a massive underground economy. This money rarely benefits communities legitimately. It flows through criminal channels, sometimes into money laundering schemes, often into consumption that displays wealth without building real security. To truly understand the Bloods, you have to see the full picture. The violence that traumatizes communities, the drugs that fuel addiction, the predatory crimes that harm the vulnerable, and the criminal culture that keeps neighborhoods unsafe. Social conditions might explain why gangs exist, but the activities themselves inflict real, undeniable harm that cannot be ignored or minimized.
Now that we've seen what the Blood Gang actually do, the violence, the drug trafficking, the robberies, the extortion, it's critical to understand what all of this means for the communities they occupy. The presence of the Blood Gang doesn't just affect a few individuals, it shapes the entire neighborhood, leaving a trail of trauma, fear, and economic devastation. The most immediate and heartbreaking impact is the violence itself. Neighborhoods with an active Blood Gang presence see higher rates of shootings, homicides, and assaults. Many of the victims are young men, often African American or Latino, caught up in territorial disputes, acts of retaliation, or attempts to maintain respect. Every death doesn't just stop a life, it ripples through families and communities. Mothers bury children, siblings grow up without brothers, and children grow up without fathers. Beyond those killed, countless others suffer permanent injuries, disabilities, or psychological trauma. Innocent bystanders, sometimes just walking home or playing outside, are often caught in the crossfire, paying a price for conflicts they had nothing to do with. This constant threat of violence breeds pervasive fear. Residents change how they live, avoiding certain streets, staying indoors after dark, keeping children from playing outside. What results isn't living, it's surviving. Children grow up witnessing acts of brutality, which normalizes violence and deeply affects their psychological development. Chronic exposure to this stress can cause lasting mental health issues, often untreated, leaving a generation scarred before they even have a chance to build their own future. Economic consequences follow closely behind the violence. Businesses in Blood Gang-controlled neighborhoods face impossible choices:
pay protection money, spend heavily on security, or close up shop. Many choose to leave or never even open, leaving economic deserts where residents struggle to access basic goods and services. Job opportunities vanish, tax revenue dries up, schools and infrastructure suffer, and property values plummet. Families lose the chance to build wealth through home ownership, reinforcing cycles of poverty that persist across generations. The drug trade compounds these problems. Addiction destroys lives and families. Children grow up in unstable homes, often neglected or traumatized by a parent's substance abuse. Money spent on drugs leaves the local economy entirely, further starving businesses and community programs of resources. Arrests, convictions, and incarceration remove people from families and neighborhoods, disrupting lives and reducing economic productivity. The very system meant to maintain order can sometimes contribute to instability by removing large numbers of people from the community. Schools face a unique set of challenges in gang-affected areas. Gang recruitment targets students, and violence often spills into classrooms. Teachers and administrators are forced to manage tensions and safety concerns rather than focus purely on education. Students' fear for their lives impacts their ability to learn, lowering academic performance, reducing future opportunities, and ironically making the gang lifestyle appear more appealing than legitimate paths that seem unattainable. Social cohesion also breaks down. Neighborhoods fragment along gang lines. Families with different affiliations can become enemies. Longtime neighbors find themselves on opposite sides of violent disputes, and local institutions struggle to maintain trust or unity. The social fabric that allows neighborhoods to function as communities erodes, leaving people isolated, fearful, and divided. Perhaps the most tragic effect of the blood gang's presence is the way it perpetuates cycles of poverty, violence, and limited opportunity. Gangs thrive where poverty is entrenched, yet their activity drives away businesses and opportunities, worsening economic conditions. Education suffers, limiting legitimate paths for young people, who then see gangs as the only way to gain money, respect, and status. Young people see blood gang members with money, flashy clothes, and apparent power, while law-abiding community members struggle to get by. The impact of the blood gang reveals not only the damage caused by a single gang, but also deeper systemic failures. Economic systems have created concentrated poverty. Educational systems have failed to prepare youth for real opportunities, and social systems often cannot provide sufficient support for families. Gang activity fills these voids, but in doing so, it multiplies problems, making already vulnerable communities even worse. Communities affected by gangs deserve far better than this cycle of violence and despair. They deserve safety, stability, opportunity, and hope. But to achieve that, we have to stop seeing gang presence as inevitable. Understanding the blood gang's impact is the first step towards solving the problem. It requires sustained commitment, investment in economic opportunity, education, and community support, and a recognition that these issues are interconnected. Only then can communities rebuild, break the cycles of poverty and violence, and provide young people with paths that do not lead to crime, addiction, or trauma. In short, the blood gang's activities don't just harm individuals, they shape entire neighborhoods. From shootings to drugs, robberies to extortion, each act creates consequences that spread across families, schools, and the economy. The cycle of violence, fear, and poverty isn't inevitable, but breaking it requires understanding both the gang and the deep impact it has on the community so that solutions can finally reach those who need them most.
Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the Bloods gang and the real impact their activities have on communities. If you found this video informative, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos on gangs and crime across the USA. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
What do you think is the most shocking consequence of gang activity on neighborhoods? Let us know in the comments below. Your input helps us explore these stories even deeper. Remember, this is Gangster Files USA, bringing you the stories behind the headlines. Stay informed, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next video.